Take a look into any village, town, or city, and you'll see children the world over are basically the same. Children love to do the same things, to sing and draw, to run and play, and to learn. Most of us would agree that all children, no matter where they live, should have the chance to do these things. In the United States, we take this for granted. Children attend school from 6 years of age. A lot of kids work after school to earn extra money, and there are federal and state laws to protect children from being exploited. For instance, teenagers 14 and 15 years old can work up to 3 hours a day on school days and up to 18 hours during the school week. And the law spells out what kind of work teenagers can and can't do. But something is wrong. In many countries throughout the world, children can't go to school. They never get to play, and they don't have much to smile about. Instead, they have to work. We call this oppressive child labor. When we talk about oppressive child labor, generally we mean that the children are under the legal minimum age to work, that they work longer hours than the law allows, are paid very little or no wages at all, typically work in dangerous and unhealthy conditions, and the work prevents them from getting an education. Some kids start working as early as 4 years old. They work to help support their families who are very poor. Some families are so desperate for money, they sell their children to cruel employers. These children never have the chance to learn to read and write. They don't get to run and play and spend time just being kids. You can see the pain and sorrow in their eyes. The Industrial Revolution was a time of great change for America's workers, especially children. From the early 1800s until child labor was first regulated in 1938, children were a plentiful source of cheap labor. They worked in New England textile mills, in Appalachian coal mines, in New York City sweatshops, and in Delaware canneries.
I get up 5:30 every morning. At 7 o'clock, we all sit down to our machines. The machines go like mad all day, because the faster you work, the more money you get. Sometimes, in my haste, I get my finger caught and the needle goes right through it. It goes so quick, though, that it does not hurt much. I bind the finger up with a piece of cotton and go on working. We all have accidents like that. All of the time we are working, the boss walks about examining the finished garments and making us do them over again if they are not just right. So we have to be careful as well as swift.
Many people opposed child labor in the last half of the 19th century and the first decades of the 20th century. Labor unions, crusading journalists, and social activists all tried to end child labor. But businesses continued to employ children because they were cheap and easy to exploit. Most people in America didn't think twice about it until it hit the front pages of the newspapers. In the spring of 1911, a fire broke out on the 4th floor of the Triangle Shirtwaist Company building in downtown New York. When the 1,000 employees tried to escape, they found the doors locked because the boss wanted to keep them from leaving. 146 garment workers, many of them young girls, died in the fire. More and more people became aware of the problem after tragedies like the Triangle Shirtwaist Company fire. Finally, in 1937, President Franklin Roosevelt's administration came up with the Fair Labor Standards Act,
was signed by President Roosevelt and
which became the law in 1938. Labor unions and reformers worked hard to get this law passed. The law shortened the normal work week to 40 hours with time and a half overtime after 40 hours. It created a minimum wage that employers had to pay workers and said that you had to be at least 14 years old to work, with a few exceptions. Most states have additional laws which may add restrictions on age, the amount of hours they can work, and the type of work children can do. The best part of the law was children who were working could now go to school and have time during the week for other things. Although we have come a long way since the 1930s, child labor is still a huge problem. Even in the United States, the law provides very little protection for kids who work as hired farm workers in agriculture. They may still be employed for an unlimited number of hours outside the school day and may be exposed to harmful pesticides and working conditions. Outside the U.S., the problem is much worse. Child labor exists in Asia, Africa, Europe, and in the Americas. Unemployment and poverty are widespread in many of these places, and they lack modern technology. To get enough money to live, entire families, including children, are forced to work long hours for very little money and under degrading conditions. And it is children who suffer the most. Some employers prefer to hire children because they cost less and are easily controlled. They are unlikely to complain about their low wages or unsafe conditions. Even though there are laws protecting children in the U.S. and in many other countries, they are often not enforced. In addition to working as brickmakers, rug weavers, farm workers, miners, factory workers, and street vendors, some kids are forced to become soldiers in the army or prostitutes on the street. Oppressive child labor is one of the most important problems in the world today.
The countries which have the problem of child labor, child slavery, child prostitution, they should be aware of it. The common people and the government should recognize that this is a problem. Child labor is a complex problem and there's a long way to go, but we are progressing every day, I think, and we are moving towards elimination of child labor ultimately.
It's not only adults who are working to end child labor. Kids have joined the effort too. At School 31 in Yonkers, New York, Miss Doherty's class has been learning about children in other countries who are forced to work instead of go to school. They decided they would send money to help kids in Bangladesh.
We later found out that the money that we were able to collect went to a school that was established for children who had formerly worked in a garment factory and were now able to leave the factory and to go to school and receive learning, the things that all children need in order to be successful and happy in life. Who can tell me how they feel about child labor? Asia?
We have a better life than they do because we don't have to work in factories. We just could go to school and have like play and stuff, and they don't get to do that. They just have to work all day, and that's not fair.
I think it's important to be in school so they can learn.
I think we should stop child labor so the kids can have freedom.
How if you were a child and they made you work, how would you feel?
My children really felt deep in their hearts. They were able to see in a very direct way how just giving the small amounts of change that they could had really affected the lives of others.
I feel proud about myself because I helped children to get out of the place.
The working conditions in this factory are horrible.
In Ridgewood, New Jersey, kids felt so strongly about child labor that they wrote an original play about companies in the U.S. who employ children to work in their factories overseas.
New sneakers, Jessica?
You bet. They cost a bundle, but they're Nikes.
I don't want to be mean or anything, but did you know those sneakers were made in Vietnam by workers treated really badly?
What the heck are you talking about? Nikes are all-American sneakers made right here in the United States.
Well, in social studies, we've been learning about how workers are treated around the world. And we found out that Nikes used to be made here, but not anymore.
Although they weren't allowed to perform it at their school, the play impressed a theater owner so much, he invited the troupe to perform at his theater in New York City. One of the most heartfelt stories of kids having to work comes from Pakistan. It's about a small boy with big, round eyes. His name was Iqbal.
He was like tiny, so we were like, we were amazed that he was so small. But his voice was quiet, but he had a very strong message. And his feet, when he sat in the chair, the feet didn't even touch the floor. They were swinging away.
7th graders at Broadmeadows Middle School in Quincy, Massachusetts met Iqbal when he came to Boston to receive a Human Rights Award from Reebok. 7th grade teacher Mr. Adams arranged for Iqbal to visit his class.
He wanted to see what a school was like in the United States, and so he came to Broadmeadows, and we heard his story about how he worked 12 hours a day since he was 6 years old. His parents sold him to pay for his sister's wedding. You know, we thought child labor, oh, paper routes, you know, you have to go out at 7 o'clock in the morning, but then we found out that there's a lot worse that's going on in other places.
To think that there were slaves and laborers that are my own age really scared me and had this big impact on me.
Iqbal worked in a rug-making factory. They had looms, and what the children would do, they needed children to tie the tiny knots to make the rugs. They were handmade, so they were all individual strands that you had to tie, and they needed tiny fingers. And they also had this big, it looked like it weighed about 6 or 7 pounds, and it looked like a claw that they'd squish the strings down with. And also, if the children didn't work fast enough or they messed up, the overseer would use that to hit them, to beat them with. And they were hunched over a loom, just sitting on a bench barefoot, breathing in all the dust particles from the threads and whatever. And they only made 6 or 7 pennies a week.
Meeting Iqbal changed the way the students thought about kids working. They did some research and learned what was really going on.
As a teenager, and especially like a girl teenager, you go, you know, you're into clothes and stuff, and you find out some of the things you're wearing are made by children your age. You're like, wow, how could I care so much about how I look when there are children out there that are making my clothes that have no school and have no food, and some don't have family.
The children were moved when they met Iqbal, moved to take action, because they literally came face to face with child labor, and they took action, big time.
Our anger turned into activism. We launched a huge letter writing campaign, and we began phoning local carpet stores asking if they sold carpets made by children. Several told us it was none of our business. They were wrong. It's everyone's business. 4 months later, we were devastated. The nightly news told us of the murder of Iqbal Masih, shot dead while riding his bicycle near his grandmother's house in Pakistan. Writing letters didn't seem like enough anymore. It took a few weeks to figure out how we would respond to his murder. We thought about Iqbal's visit to our school, about his dream. He told us that his dream was for all children to be free and in school. That was it. Education was the answer. We decided to build a school in Pakistan in Iqbal's memory.
When they came up with the idea to build a school in Pakistan in Iqbal's memory, I can remember thinking, I don't think so. That might be too much. But I have learned in my 20 years as a teacher not to limit children's dreams. So I listened. And when they were through explaining how they were going to go about using a computer and using the power of the kids in this school and using their parents and using the workplace of their parents and contacting other schools, and they were so excited, I was very glad that I just kept my mouth closed and said, great, I'll help you.
We set up, we'd, stir people's emotions, we'd get their attention, just kept going and going and going, and sometimes we just have to stop and realize we were like, whoa, what have we done? And then we pushed the goal up to $10,000, and we got that, and it was $15,000 and $25,000 and $50,000. We thought $50,000 was just too much.
In November of 1996, we did it. We raised about $147,000 in a tiny 5-room school dedicated to Iqbal Masih, and all the working children of the world opened in Pakistan.
Because of the hard work of Mr. Adams' class, Iqbal's dream has become a reality.
In many parts of the world, we have seen that the children are the leaders of today itself. They are taking initiatives and they are making a difference. And they can make a big difference in eradicating child labor. No doubt about it.
There are many ways that kids can contribute to the global campaign to end child labor. Learn the facts. Read about the problem of child labor and how it affects you and your family, your school, and your community. Become an educated consumer. Read labels on clothing and on toys to see where they are made. Visit stores and tell the owner or manager that you don't want to buy items made by child labor, and you care about the conditions under which the products they sell were made. Ask them to look into this issue with their suppliers. Write to your elected officials and representatives. Tell them that you want strong laws protecting children working in the United States and preventing the importation of products made by child labor. Urge your senator to ratify international treaties that call for the end of child labor. Write to heads of companies. Urge them to adopt codes of conduct and independent inspections of factories to ensure that their products are not produced by children. Speak out about the issue to your friends, your family, and organizations in your community. Write letters to your local newspaper, and circulate petitions and informative posters in your school and community. The more people know about child labor, the better.
Kids do have power and kids can make a difference.
You can make a difference. Don't let anyone bring you down. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. As long as you believe in yourself, you can do it.